Bonjour! So in my first video, I showed you how to approach making a plan for your 90-word writing task. Then in my second video, I used that plan to write my 90-word task. And now I'm going to show you how to use the mark scheme, or how the examiner will use the mark scheme to mark your writing. And if you understand how to use the mark scheme, you will know what you need to include to get the highest possible marks. So this was the text that I wrote. If you need a bit of revision on that, please go back to my second video on using a plan to write the text. So when the examiner is looking at your work, they give you 10 marks for content, 6 marks for the quality of language, and therefore the total is 16. So we need to know, how can we get 10 marks for content and 10 marks for quality of language, and what does that mean? So let's have a look at the mark scheme first for the content part. So this is what they're looking for when we're talking about content. It's really important to know this little trick, that if you answer one bullet point, you're here. If you answer 2 bullet points, you're only going to get between 3 and 4 marks. If you answer 3 bullet points, you're going to get between 5 and 6. And if you answer all 4 bullet points, you can get between 7 to 10 marks. So it doesn't matter how amazing your bullet points are. If you answer 2 bullet points and they are absolutely fabulous, and you cover all of the tenses and you write 90 words, but you only answer 2 bullet points, you can still only get 3 to 4 marks for the content. It is really important that you answer all 4 bullet points. It doesn't matter if they're not equal. You might answer 1 bullet point with 1 sentence because you don't understand it very well. But at least you've covered it. That means you can go into this box 7 to 8 or even 9 to 10. So what it's looking for in the mark scheme is that it says, here we're covering all aspects, covering almost all aspects, so 3 points, covering some aspects, 2 points, covering some aspects, 1 point. So the key thing that you need to do is cover all aspects of the task. Now, something else that's in here is opinions are expressed. If you answer all the bullet points, you will have expressed opinions. This is not something to spend too much time worrying about, because one of the bullet points will always be asking for opinions, and we're training you so much in lessons that everything you say, you're going to be giving opinions. So don't worry about this too much. If you cover all aspects of the task, you will have expressed opinions. The thing that is very important to focus on is communication is clear. Mostly clear. Communication is generally clear. Communication is sometimes clear. Communication is often not clear. So you can see how we progress up to the top box. It doesn't say communication is complicated. It doesn't say communication is particularly complex. It says communication is clear. So when we're writing our plan, that's why it is so important to focus on language that we know is accurate, that we know how to use, that we don't daydream and think about our actual real answer to the question. Remember, I gave you the example that I would love to go to the Caribbean, but I don't know how to say that in French. So instead, I'm going to think, what country can I say in French? Aha, I can say Italy because it's an easy one. And I'm going to write my sentences about going to Italy because I know how to say that. Always focus on what you know how to say. It doesn't need to be true. It doesn't need to be interesting. It doesn't need to be complex, but it does need to be clear. Okay? Let's see what I've done to get 10 marks for content. So straight away, we can see that I've paragraphed my answer into 4 paragraphs. You don't need to do the bullet points, but the paragraphs are particularly useful. So the examiner can see straight away that I've answered 4 bullet points. You don't need to answer them in the order that they're given. However, it does help because then the examiner isn't looking all over the place trying to find your answers. If you answer them in the correct order that they're given, then it makes it easy to get the points. So I've covered all aspects of the task here. I've written just over 100 words, so I've written the right amount so the examiner can see that I've given a good response, I've answered them all. And obviously, because I'm creating a model for you, my communication is clear. I've picked language that I know is accurate. I didn't try anything fancy. I knew how to say j'ai mangé, so I used it. I practiced my past tenses before in my plan, so I knew that I was going to get them accurate when I put them into my text, so I knew that my communication was going to be clear. Okay, so cover all aspects of the task and make sure your communication is clear, and you will be getting into the 9 to the 10 box. Let's have a look at the next part now. So quality of language. What do you need to do to get 6 marks for the quality of language? Again, this isn't actually that hard. What you're looking for is a variety. This says some variety, and this, the range of vocabulary may be narrow or repetitive. Okay, so we're not using things like intéressant and amusant all of the time. You might use them once, but then don't repeat them. Use a variety. Instead of just saying j'aime all the time, you might say some things like je préfère, or j'apprécie, or j'ai une passion pour. So you're using a variety of different ways of saying the same thing, okay? The other thing that's really important in the quality of language box is complex structures. This is, there may be an attempt at complex structures. And this one is sentences are short and simple. Now, this can sometimes confuse us because I've just said use simple sentences that are clear and accurate. When we're looking for complex structures, they're not necessarily as complex as you might think. Using parce que to join an opinion to a fact. J'aime la pizza parce que c'est délicieux. That would count as a complex structure. Using a time frame. Instead of saying je suis allé au restaurant, you could say hier je suis allé au restaurant. You're including time frames and time phrases, which is a complex structure. You might want to compare something. I compared the weather in France and England. Il fait plus beau en France qu'en Angleterre. So a comparison would be a complex structure. Maybe a superlative, le plus intéressant or le plus beau, okay, is a complex structure. Anything that goes above just a normal j'aime le foot would make it complex. So you want to maybe include at least one in each bullet point. Now, the next thing which is really important is 3 time frames. In here, we've got 2 time frames, and in the 1 to 2 box, we've got no time frames. However, again, if you've answered all the bullet points, you will have got time frames. So it's not something to worry about too much. Answer all the bullet points and you'll have hit all the time frames. The last thing that we want to look at is the clarity of your language. Again, this goes back to the accuracy. The intended meaning is nearly always clear. The intended meaning is usually clear. And then at the bottom, frequent errors, so it's not very clear. Okay, so Again, that goes back to the same point that we've just talked about. If you plan what you're going to write and you choose language that you know is accurate, then your meaning will always be clear. If you are not sure, then don't write that sentence. Choose another one. Let's have a look how I did it. So let's have a look for variety of language. So I've used a nice adjective here. I've used pittoresque. I chose some more unusual sports that I already knew, so la planche à voile and l'escalade. I mean, I did use football and tennis as well, but that was after I'd used the more exciting vocabulary. I've used a comparison. Il fait plus beau en France qu'en Angleterre, so I've used a variety here. I've used je préfère and I've used j'aime, and I've used a negative, je ne suis pas fan de. So I've used quite a bit of different language there. I'm not always saying the same thing. And then in terms of complex structures, again, I've used a comparison. I've used an adverb here, vraiment, really. I've used a conjunction. I've said something that I like to do. I like to do windsurfing, but I'm not a fan of climbing, so I've made my sentence more complex by putting a negative in there. I've got quite a few different time phrases in my work, which is going to add to the complexity. And then thinking about time frames. Reference to 3 time frames. My first 2 bullet points are in the present tense because they were asking for descriptions and opinions. And then in my 3rd bullet point, I've got 3 different perfect past tenses here. And I've got an imperfect as well. So I've got 4 references to the past tense in that bullet point using 2 different past tenses. And then in my 4th bullet point, I've got a conditional and I've got a future, and I've got a future in the 3rd person as well. So I've referenced 3 different time frames. So just to repeat, answer all 4 bullet points, make sure you know what you're writing and make sure you know that it is accurate. This is not the time to try new things. This is the time to use language that you know is accurate. And in that way, you'll be able to get 10 points on the content and 10 points on your use of language, which will mean that you're able to get 16 points. Good luck. Bonne chance.